We begin, you see, with a curious and almost comic predicament. Here you are, breathing quite effortlessly, your heart beating without consulting you, your hair growing without instruction, and yet you sit there with a furrowed brow, asking, "Am I doing life correctly?" As if existence were a complicated piece of machinery handed to you without a manual, and any moment now it might break if you press the wrong button. Now that very question, "Am I doing it right?" is already the beginning of the trouble. Because life, my dear friends, is not something you are supposed to do. It is something that is happening. And the moment you try to seize it, manage it, control it, or discipline it into behaving properly, it slips through your fingers like water. You grasp harder, and it escapes faster. Imagine trying to calm the surface of a lake with your hands. You splash and press and slap the water, determined to make it still. But every movement only creates more ripples. Eventually, you sit back, exhausted, and the water becomes calm by itself. You did not do calmness. You stopped interfering. This is precisely what we are doing with our lives. We are trying to smooth the water with our fists. From the moment we are very small, we are taught that control is virtue. Control your impulses. Control your thoughts. Control your emotions, control your future. And so we grow into adults who are perpetually tense, clenched like a fist, wondering why life feels brittle, joyless, and exhausting. We are like musicians who squeeze the violin so tightly that no music can emerge. You see, the desire to control life arises from fear. The fear that if we let go, something dreadful will happen. That if we stop managing, supervising, and worrying, the whole thing will collapse. But what a strange assumption that is that the universe requires your anxiety in order to function properly. Look at the stars. Look at the tides. Look at the way your lungs know precisely when to inhale and exhale without asking for your permission. Existence has been going on quite skillfully for a very long time. And suddenly, here comes the human being saying, "Now wait a minute, I'd better take charge of this." And so we invent an imaginary controller inside ourselves. A little supervisor perched somewhere behind the eyes, barking orders, passing judgment, issuing warnings. "You shouldn't feel this. You must do better. You're falling behind." And this poor phantom is worked to death. It has no holidays, no rest. It is always on duty. But here's the great joke. The controller is itself part of what is happening. It is not outside the flow of life. It is the flow of life pretending to stand apart from itself, like a wave in the ocean trying to manage the tide. And so we live divided. One part of us acting, another part watching and criticizing the action. One part living, another part attempting to control living. Is it any wonder we feel fragmented, anxious, and strangely unreal? Life, when left alone, has a rhythm. It rises and falls, contracts and expands, delights and disappoints. Pleasure and pain belong together like the front and back of a coin. But control demands guarantees. It wants pleasure without pain, order without chaos, permanence without change. And this demand is what makes life unlivable. Because to live is to be vulnerable, to breathe is to risk choking, to love is to risk loss. To exist at all is to be in motion, and motion cannot be controlled without being destroyed. So the question is not, how can I control my life better? The real question is, what would happen if I trusted it? What would happen if, just for a moment, you loosened your grip? If you allowed experience to move through you the way music moves through a dancer without resistance, without commentary, without supervision. We will explore that together. Slowly, gently, without trying to get anywhere at all. You see, the moment I say, trust life, the mind immediately interrupts and asks, yes, but how? And that question is already another attempt at control. It is the hand reaching back into the water to smooth the ripples again. Trust, you see, is not something you do. It is something that happens when you stop doing something else. Consider how you fall asleep. If you lie in bed saying, now I must fall asleep. I must relax. I must stop thinking. You will lie there all night, staring at the ceiling, increasingly irritated by the failure of your technique. But the moment you stop trying to sleep, when you give up the effort altogether, sleep arrives on its own, like a cat curling up quietly in your lap. Living works in much the same way. We imagine that effort is the engine of existence, that without constant vigilance, life would become sloppy, immoral, or meaningless. But effort has its place, and it is not everywhere. There's a kind of effort that is natural, like the effort of walking, or speaking, or playing a game. And then there is a neurotic effort, the effort to guarantee outcomes, to secure the future, to make sure nothing ever goes wrong. That effort is endless, exhausting, and futile. When you try to control life, you treat it as if it were hostile territory, as if existence were fundamentally against you, and your job were to outwit it. But life is not an enemy. It is not even an object. It is what you are. This is where the great confusion lies. We think of ourselves as something inside the body, something separate from the world, something that must navigate an external reality. But that is like thinking the whirlpool is separate from the river. You are not in the universe. You are something the universe is doing in the same way that a tree is something the earth is doing. And yet, having forgotten this, we become frightened. We cling. We tense. We build elaborate strategies to protect an imaginary self from an imaginary threat. And the tragedy is that the protection becomes the prison. Take, for example, the way we relate to emotions. Suppose sadness appears. Immediately, the controller steps in and says, "This is not acceptable. I must fix this." And so we resist the sadness, analyze it, justify it, suppress it, or dramatize it. But in all cases, we are refusing to let it be what it is. And so it lingers. Emotion, like weather, pauses when it is allowed to move. But when you dam a river, it stagnates. Control turns feelings into problems, thoughts into enemies, and experiences into obstacles. The same is true of thought itself. You may notice that the mind chatters endlessly, and so you decide, "I must quiet my mind." And immediately the mind produces another thought. "Am I quiet yet?" And then another, "I'm failing at this." And another, "I must try harder." It is like trying to bite your own teeth. The mind cannot control the mind, because the controller is the mind. This is why all sincere attempts at absolute self-control eventually collapse into frustration or absurdity. You cannot stand outside yourself and manage yourself because there is no outside. Now, this does not mean you abandon intelligence or discernment. It means you stop fighting the very process that gives rise to intelligence in the first place. When you stop interfering, clarity emerges naturally. When you stop forcing morality, compassion appears spontaneously. When you stop demanding meaning, life feels meaningful again. Think of a dancer. If the dancer were constantly checking their posture, timing, and appearance in the mirror, the dance would be stiff and mechanical. But when the dancer forgets themselves, the movement becomes alive. Grace happens when control relaxes. And this is the great secret we are circling around. Life becomes livable the moment you stop demanding that it obey you. The moment you stop asking it to make sense on your terms. The moment you allow yourself to be carried rather than constantly swimming upstream. But what does it mean, in practical terms, to let go? It does not mean becoming passive, indifferent, or careless. It means acting without clinging, speaking without rehearsing, loving without bargaining, living without demanding guarantees. And that, of course, feels terrific until you notice that you have been doing it all along.